All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the CTG podcast. It's Sam again, and just a little topic I wanted to talk about this week or this video because I've been dropping them kind of frequently is the quintessential topic that has been talked about for about a decade now that I can't believe we're still talking about is will competition shooting get you killed in the streets? Really, my big thing is the topic is really what's the difference between performance training and self-defense training, and I didn't really want to just drone on about my feelings about it. Everybody knows my feelings about it. I was on Instagram the other day and I saw a post by one of the guys, one of the local instructors to me, somebody who comes and shoots my matches, trains with me, Gino. And it was just a very simple post. I have it posted up here. I have the picture next to us. It was just a very simple post, informational, had nothing to do with attitude, opinions, or tactics, just had to do with irrefutable data. So, welcome, Gino. Gino, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to my people here.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. I'm Gino Gigliotti, owner, coach at First In Training Company. I started the company about 5.5 years ago. Training focus is on practical hard skills for developing on-demand performance under stress in pistol and carbine. Um, I compete actively in USPSA, PSCSL, or any other hit factor matches I can get my hands on. Um, I've been training continuously as a student to this day since 2012 with varying instructors from the tactical side to the performance side. Spent a career as a Philadelphia fireman, one of the busiest houses in North Philly. After retiring from the fire department, I started working as an instructor in an indoor range for 4 years before I started my company. And there was where I kind of learned about the very low bar that was set for training or what was considered somebody trained. And so, particularly the prioritization of shooting under any sort of pressure or stress. Um, so I thought that, my experience being a fireman, just from the skills perspective, not, I'm not talking gunfighting here or anything like that, just from the skills perspective, as far as being able to perform a skill while you're calm and the difference between doing it while you're under some sort of pressure. So I thought I could bring something to the table there. And then probably about 3 years ago, I had a major dramatic shift in my own personal training and my approach as an instructor, which ultimately led me to competing, which I started doing about a year and a half ago and have not stopped since or looked back, and considered a critical component now of my own personal training and for students that come to a class. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
No, I like that. You're one of the I hate saying students, clients, whatever, but you're one of the shooters that came to my range as a good student, and I can a good shooter, like a very good shooter, and I can now say is a great shooter and is getting better still, which is one of those things that everybody starts to get into as you get into performance shooting. Whatever you thought was good or good enough, you start to apply that hit factor metric and that competition attitude to it. Not that you need to be a national competitor or anything, but you start going, oh, I can be better. How do I get better? You start asking people who are doing the same thing as you, but to a better time standard, a better accuracy standard. And what do you know? We have performance training kind of in a nutshell. So I like a lot of the things that you ended up saying. Like, I'm not here to teach tactics or law enforcement, this, that, and the other thing. You had a stressful job that demanded performance under pressure and stress, and you like to apply that metric to what you do now, which is shooting, teaching people to shoot. Now, my whole story is very similar. Like, I'm not a police officer. I never was, never in the military, nothing like that. I was a competitive shooter my entire life, ironically, but I started shooting uh, in the industry or teaching in the industry at that indoor range you were talking about, right? And
Right.
like you're in the indoor range and you start seeing what a poor metric of even safety is, let alone training. And you're like, all right, this is terrifying. I can't believe that this is like, I can't believe I'm the best shooter in here because you're like, I'm not that good a shooter when you're working 10, 15 years ago and like you're the best RO on the line. And it was almost spooky. You doing all these calls for all the police officers that come in and you can outshoot all the tactical guys. And you're like, wow, this is, you get kind of a heads up into, wow, the standards aren't that crazy in most of the people who shoot, right? And that's where I wanted to bring in another instructor, somebody else, as I mentioned before, we were talking outside of the echo chamber of just competitive shooting, because as much as we think we know everything and we think everybody knows what we're up to, we're a very small subset of this performance shooting, competitive shooters. But over the last year or so, you're one of the greatest examples. Instructors who want to get better, they don't want to just sit there and be complacent. They poke their head out of the woodworks. They go, what else is out there? And they start to come to the performance side. And I have yet to see anybody come out negative, right? Like I've
Yeah,
never seen anybody come out worse because of it. Shooting is the shooting is always something I've said. It's always something I've preached. Tactics get you to the shooting. Once you're shooting, shooting's a shooting. It's all about metrics. It's all about accuracy over speed and things like that. And that's
right,
where your little infographic came in that I was like, ooh, I love this because there's no argument about this. I'm a big person in one of my previous podcasts. I talk about defining like what is your metrics of success? Because if you don't know what success is, how do you measure success, right?
right.
Well, I like this. What are the metrics? What are the general attributes required to be a good, let's just say, shooter? And then you could branch it into the two as you tactfully have, but we know we're talking the same language, right? Like, all
Yes.
right, so I wanted you to like go ahead. You could start us off. Like, what's the first thing that you see in defensive shooting? What's the first thing required, right?
Yeah, so like I put this together, and just real quick, I mean, like we were talking about, it's the fact that you're even having this conversation is absurd. I mean, you could just lay it out very simply, and side by side, the same skills are required across the board. And look, at the end of the day, I'm not married to any of this stuff. Like, if you show me tomorrow a better way of doing things, I will completely change the way I've been doing it and go with that. It just has to be consistent, repeatable. It has to be able to be done under stress and pressure. If you can show me that, then I'll change tomorrow. I don't care. But yeah, so I put this together just to kind of because I still was having these arguments with people on the internet, and it was just getting ridiculous.
Yep.
So first one, safe, fast, efficient draw. I mean, from a defensive side. Now, originally, just to be clear, when I put this together, it was from an EDC perspective. So we're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
talking about some sort of apocalyptic scenario
Oh,
or
yeah.
anything like that.
Just general
So
shooting. Yep.
yeah, so from an
That's what
EDC.
I tell people. I'm a citizen just trying to shoot better. That's it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's okay. So something happens, from an EDC perspective, you're somebody that carries every day. You need to be able to get the gun out quickly, safely, and efficiently.
Yep.
Okay. That's right there across the board. So,
Sounds pretty funny because every competitive shooter I know loves posting their dry fire of them sitting there and hammering their draws and hammering their consistent stuff. And then how do
yeah,
you draw? Well, we don't know. So in competition, what do? Hands up, hands down, turn around, empty the
right.
gun. I don't know. Well, it sounds pretty familiar to me. I don't know if I'm going to be in Walmart. I don't know if I'm going to be seated in my truck. I don't know if
Yeah.
somebody grabbed me from behind. I don't know if shots are going to pop off from behind me, but it sounds like right away, hey, you can't get over the fact that the gun needs to be presented in a safe and efficient manner. You
Right.
said something. I like efficiency. I just like if you could prove to me you can do it better, I'll do it that way. I like that. We use hit factor. We just happen to do that, right?
Yeah.
I was having this argument with a couple of, not argument, but spirited conversation with a couple of SWAT guys about this. And I was like, well, let's just say two people make it through a shoot house. And the metric for success is I don't get shot and I shoot all the perps. All right, cool. Well, one of us did it in 30 seconds and one of us did it in 10 minutes. Wouldn't you ask the guy who did it in 30 seconds how he did it? Right?
Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. That's all I'm talking. That's all we're talking here. So we start to realize, all right, well, if I could present the gun in a more safe and efficient manner, it doesn't matter how, get it done. You could start to segment the draw from the competition to just getting we'll call it a master grip, a support grip, and then to your eyes. I don't care where the gun starts.
Right.
Right? That's it. Period.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I mean, with this stuff too, it's very similar. Both competing, shooting a match, and from an EDC perspective, the on-demand part of it and the cold part of it. Those are two things that are identical, and that will be the case. And so sometimes, particularly when talking about the draw, you guys they'll kind of sort of shit all over, oh, you have a sub-second draw, big deal. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because you should know how long it takes you to get out the gun. If from a everyday standpoint, if you're in a grocery store in an aisle, and let's just say you happen to be one of those guys in an active shooter situation, if it takes you 3-4 seconds to get the gun out, and now you add the level of stress that would be in that situation, that's a long time for you to get the gun out.
A lot of
As
shots.
opposed to, if you could get the gun out sub-second, and now maybe the stress adds a few tenths of a second, there goes your banner.
It's okay. We have the fireside chats today. So
Yeah. So these are things you want to know. You want to be able to be able to measure your performance to actually tell if you're getting better or not.
yeah,
So
metrics. I love that. And I also like what you just said too, because you're like, hey, if I'm under stress in a Walmart or something, I'm not waiting on the beep anymore, right?
right,
My 1 second draw is a quarter second to hear shots, a quarter second to be like, oh my God, and then start drawing. So all of a sudden, that sub-second draw you're talking about is a 1-7 in real life.
right,
That's important because that's 1-7 of him shooting versus 5, 6, 8 seconds of that person shooting, right? I
right,
think that's a pretty big deal. That's not anything. I mean, I like measuring accuracy and speed. So hit factors, I mean, my hit factor goes up, right? If I can have a safe, efficient draw, but that guy does less damage to me or my loved ones or people around me if I can be more efficient, period, hard stop, right?
right.
And now you said something too, knowing your metrics and standards, like knowing how many shots I can take at a certain distance, at a certain accuracy standard, makes you make better decisions from an EDC's perspective. I should or should not draw from here, right? I
Right.
should do versus I should not do. You should just know your metrics. But what I
Yeah.
like is the next thing you went into is one or more threats, right? So
Right.
one or more threats. How many times have you heard in like the defensive world, like, well, three guys aren't going to be standing next to each other?
Right. Right.
That argument where like when you're shooting transition drills, well, I love this talk right there, right? You hear that all the time. And one of the
Yeah.
things I tell people is like, well, I work with a lot of SWAT. I work with a lot of operators, right? And I ask them all the time playfully, you ever shoot at anybody? And the guys who have will speak up. Yes, I have.
Mhm.
Does he stand still when you shoot at him? Generally likes to get out of the way of bullets, right? And
Mhm.
generally, should your feet be still when you're doing that? And they
Right.
start to go, oh, okay, yeah. I'm not sitting here and saying three guys are gonna like Hollywood style with a briefcase standing there, let you collateral them, right?
Right.
But if you shoot at somebody and he takes off, and especially if he's taking off shooting, it's a good thing to be able to transition efficiently and shoot efficiently and accurately without letting him gain any distance or time on you. Funny enough,
Right.
we're talking in those
Right.
kind of metrics, right?
Exactly. And with the metrics, I mean, that's with that information comes competency and also comes confidence. If you know what you can do at all these different distances or how fast you can engage different targets, all those things, that starts to breed confidence. Also, from the match perspective, like particularly the transitions, one or more threats, multiple target transitions. You can talk about it any way you want as far as processing speed or whatever. But at the end of the day, what it does is it acclimates you to doing these things. So, if you're used to, okay, I'm gonna have to shoot one, two, three, four targets, maybe short transitions, maybe wide transitions, you're already used to doing all these things. You're used to your body, your eyes. This is just the way you operate with the gun now. It's not something new that you have to learn on the fly.
It's like an overload principle in the gym or like just anything where like, hey, if you want to be able to comfortably pick up 200 pounds, you pick up 400 pounds, right? Like it's like, hey, if I want to do transitions fast and I want to do transitions efficiently, I'll do way more than necessary and I'll do them quickly. And then
Right.
I will then do them in real life at whatever speed is required. But I know I have the confidence, I have the numbers, I have the science to support that I can do these things efficiently. Now,
Exactly.
it's funny because if you went to my last pod, if you listen to this out of order and listen to this one and then listen to one of my last podcasts about like hit factor math and confidence and consistency and all that kind of stuff, you'd think I set up this stuff. And I'm like, no, it's just this is the way it works. I promise. This is just like the words that work. But
Yeah.
I like this because you talk about one or more threats go into your thing, right? One or more threats, target transitions, being able to do those kinds of things. Well, then I mentioned it too, shooting on the move. Generally speaking, in a defensive standpoint, should you probably stand still and do a sub-second draw and stand there and just have a high noon showdown with somebody?
Right.
Probably not, right? Like, probably
Right.
not. That's probably not very defensive of you. It's probably not very tactical of you, right? So, being able to measure and know your metrics and then be able to take the metrics on the move without the metrics degrading. How do we measure that? How do we figure that out? I figured out practical shooting was the easiest way to do that, right? And
Yeah.
now I've seen you kind of pick up the same thing, right? You've started to use like you could say like what drills have you been using, right?
Yeah, well, so that's exactly it. And just to pick one in particular, I mean, I do when it comes to drills, like look, when I go to the range, I have everything laid out. I'm very specific about what I want to work on.
Mhm.
I'm paying attention to the numbers, I'm paying attention, measuring performance, all that stuff. So whatever it is, there's a few things that I always do, regardless of when I go to the range. One is doubles, and the other thing is 25 yards. I think from a defensive standpoint, 25 yards is incredibly important because you have a whole lot of areas. This is something that I saw that used to drive me crazy at the indoor range, and I still see it today, which is people live on that 5 to 7 yard line and they shoot with everything bench rested, no pressure, no stress whatsoever, and it's like they're training for a fight. And 25 yards. I mean, the average length of a grocery store aisle is 33 yards. You go to Target, Home Depot, church, parking lots. These are all things with distance. The movement one in particular, one thing that you can actually see. Okay, so on the performance side, you have movement all the time, pretty much, unless you're maybe doing a standing classifier. But outside that, you're moving all the time, forward, backward, laterally, diagonally, all sorts of stuff. One thing in particular, like if you take a retreating bill drill, that has performance value and defensive utility. And that you could go on YouTube and just look up any sort of law enforcement shooting, and that actually plays out for real multiple times, something like
Yeah.
that. So,
Actually, it's funny. I failed to find the video. I was going to poke it in over here, but there was a video of somebody. It was on Instagram, but they laid over a police shooting of them. It was accidentally shooting a bill drill in reverse. Basically, he was at a traffic stop. The door was open. The guy presented a weapon and started shooting, and the police officer drew reverse bill drill till cover till the rear of the car where he encountered malfunction. He did
Yeah.
a very quick malfunction clear and then continued shooting again. And I went, well, that looks exactly like stages, right? Same
Yeah.
exact thing. And hey, turns out that being able to do these things subconsciously and being able to move and do them,
Right.
it provides value as a shooter hard stop, right? It's just that's it. Now I
Oh,
like to say shooter hard stop because when the shooting has begun, the timer's already gone off. It's a race. We're racing.
right.
There's not even an argument. I always like to then talk to my like SWAT guys and my performance guys. As an EDC guy, as a citizen, this is a little bit different. But your tactics have failed if you're experiencing return fire. Like that's a
Mhm.
big thing in my world. Like this, we're not supposed to be tacticking into a gunfight. Now, sometimes as an EDC person, you might have to draw in a bad situation, but in that regard too, I even argue a lot of my EDC guys. I want you to be a step ahead so you don't get taken advantage of. You don't get scared, right? So we talk about like if we're shooting, tactics are aside. We're shooting. It's time to
Right.
shoot. Beep has gone off. Now
Right.
it's time to put rounds on target as fast as you can, or rounds where they need to as fast as you can. Moving while doing it increases our, we'll say, efficiency in a stage. It increases your efficiency as an EDC person because now I'm harder to shoot and I can get things done, right? Well, then I like what we were talking about because it dumps you right into then accountability, right? It dumps you right down your list here into accountability, and we start to talk about, well, then in defensive shooting, especially when I talk about law enforcement to my law enforcement guys, you're accountable for every round legally. So, like,
Right.
we're in a litigious society. You are responsible for every single round that leaves the barrel of your gun, especially in public. I think that is a duh when you say it like that. Well, accountability is what I like in when I teach my shooters, right? How fast do you shoot? As fast as you can be accountable.
Right.
What does that mean? You're going to maximize the amount that you could shoot. You basically you're going to maximize the points you can see, right? You're always going to be aware of where all the bullets are. You're going to go as fast as you can see. That's the words I was looking for. You're going to go as fast as you can see, no faster, meaning there's not going to be any surprise rounds that go anywhere that you didn't know about. You're never going to be surprised by a mic on target or a delta on target. You're going to be aware of them. You're going to be accountable. In the competitive community, we just talk about being accountable and being accountable to a high percentage at a very high speed.
Right.
But when it comes down to tactical shooting or defensive shooting, you just have to then say the speed that I shoot at is at 100% accountability.
Right.
Period. Done. That's pretty simple to start to talk about because both require shot calling, right?
Yeah.
Both require the ability to know what your gun feels like under stress and pressure and being able to read your sights and your environment under stress and pressure. I don't think that changes. I don't think that changes as far as accountability goes. We just can we could be a little bit softer with our acceptable tolerances in competition
Mhm.
to push the boundaries, right? How do you get an 18 split? I mean, you have to start pushing the boundaries a little bit. But then with
Right.
pushing these boundaries, you start to learn, oh, I can start to be accountable at much higher performance standards, but without training, like without using these practical shooting applications, I would have never understood I can go that fast. I can be that good. I can be more efficient at better speeds.
Right.
I have to practice the practical side of things.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things. That was one of the biggest shifts for me is understanding this stuff, having a deeper level of understanding with all these things, the grip piece, the vision component, all that stuff. It's it really is. It's amazing what you can learn about yourself and how aggressive you can actually shoot and be fully accountable
Yep.
and actually be aware of what's happening. The one thing people will say with the competing, or in particular, since we were just talking about bill drills,
Mhm.
they'll just call it a mag dump. I'm like, that just shows me that you actually don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about, because
exactly.
something like that has performance value and defensive utility. But if you actually are doing a build drill, you understand that there's a lot of things that are going on with that drill, a lot of things that you're learning. And so it's actually a really good drill to develop a higher level of skill
Yep.
and to teach you how to be more aware of what's going on with you, with the gun, and all that stuff. And so, these things are it's an argument that never seems to end.
It's funny because I like to apply my little nerdiness to then saying like, well, why do we consider a bill drill? Because I just like to say six is enough. If I get six full contacts to a full A zone, that'd be enough in a defensive encounter to consider it a pretty good shoot, right? Now, there's a lot of variables that go into that, but we're just playing like a statistical average, right? Well, then
Right.
I like to then go to my performance style training and say then like, well, how do we train that to be a higher standard? Well, we're going to break it down into how do I go faster? How do I just straight segment the draw faster? How do I just get my trigger pulls faster? And then you start to talk about, yeah, doubles. You start to learn with doubles, how do I grip the gun? How do I use my vision? But we don't stop at doubles. You progress doubles to bill drills. Bill drills isn't the end of it. Bill drills, you start to do retreating bill drills, moving bill drills, Blake drills with the same metrics, but on the move. And you start to realize that, oh, if I don't break this down to like a scientific, I like to say sport, right? Like more of a sport level. If I don't break it down to this practical performance sport level, I won't understand all these minor concepts in there, and I won't be able to get better at something that I'm going to need to do. We've agreed that this list is something that I'm going to need to do if I ever need to pull my gun out. That's not refutable. What we're refuting is saying, hey, practical shooting will make me better at that. I swear. I swear. Breaking it down and trying to play our game of, hey, try to go faster. Try to go faster. Loosen your performance standards because this is a game for right now. And then what you do is you learn a lot. You learn what you can get away with, what you need, what you don't need. You learn. And I always relate it to the rifle shooters. Everybody knows that word dope, data on previous engagements. How do you get that data on previous engagements? By shooting a lot of previous engagements, you start to see in your head, oh, that's what I can get away with. That's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. If you don't shoot to a sporty metric, if you don't shoot these kinds of standards, if you don't shoot the way we shoot in the performance world, you don't learn. You stay comfortable. Comfort breeds complacency, and that's my big thing. You got to get uncomfortable in all this performance shooting, but then learn how to reel it in, which is I like, because you start to get uncomfortable shooting distances that otherwise people don't practice, like at the indoor ranges. You start getting comfortable shooting at speeds people don't practice at the indoor ranges just because you're not allowed to, right? So at 3 yards, you should be shooting full blast. I agree. But then you should be able to shift immediately to a 25-yard plate and take one single shot at it. And that was the very next thing on your list. Varying encounter distances. We're not just sitting here and blasting across. We're not just shooting triple nickel, right? We're not just shooting quals where it's one target on one line for 30-second par time, right? We're shooting varying distances if you're doing this correctly. And that is exactly what happens in real life. If you're moving a cover, that's a varying distance, right? Everybody talked about for a little while that hero of a shooter, Eli Dickens, right?
Yeah.
Block 43 at like 40 something yards, I think it was. He took, and everybody mistakenly said he took 10 shots standing still at 42 yards. If you look into the story, first two shots, were taking at max distance. I believe it was something like 40 yards. And then he closed to 25, closed to 15, and that's where most of the shots were taken. So that was a varying distance, right? If you are moving, if the person moves, things like that, you have to be aware of what I need to do physically, mentally, visually to account for all my shots at maximum speed, maximum performance at varying distances. How do we get that value? In performance training, just reps, right?
Yeah.
It's like a dedicated target drill, right?
Right. I mean, and that's part of the problem. I mean, a lot of times people they're too used to the slow fire accuracy shooting. And look, I'm not saying that there's not a time for slow fire shooting. There absolutely is. But you can use a whole lot of analogies. Okay, the race car analogy. I use the fighter analogy. I'm like, okay, well, if a fighter is preparing for a fight, who do they put him in there with? They put him in there with somebody that's going to be bigger than the person he's fighting, faster, for longer rounds, for a longer duration in the rounds, all these things, so that when he has the fight, it's easier in comparison. It's easier for you to go up here to have this level of shooting and slow down if you need to. You will not, it does not work the other way. You cannot go from shooting at 7 yards, slow fire, to now all of a sudden being in arguably maybe the most stressful moment of your life, shooting at 25 yards aggressively and with accountability. It will not work. It'll come completely apart.
I love that little like, oh, I see red and I'll rise to the occasion. I actually, as a coach in multiple sports, just like CrossFit, this, that, the other thing, there's no such thing as rise to the occasion. I'm sorry, moms, but there's no amount of adrenaline that makes you stronger. It makes you as strong as you trained, and that's my big thing. You will always rise to the level of your training. So hey, train to a high level, you'll get a high level in training in performance, boom, period. If you just slow fire accuracy, that's what your brain is comfortable doing. And when you need speed, you'll get speed, but you will be so uncomfortable doing it, you won't know how to achieve the accountability, the metrics required. So I like that analogy, because you start to see you need the distance variance, you need to fail, you need to have the permission to fail in this competition world, to learn how to do it better, so that when you're under pressure, under stress, you could do it the way we prescribed it, right?
Yeah.
You could shoot at 25, 15, 10, 5 yards. You could shoot at all these without having to consciously think about it. You just know subconsciously what my sight picture should look like.
Right.
I'll listen to my gun. That's it. That's all.
Exactly. And you know, what you said before about the shooting problem, it really is. I mean, and that's what I put in the post. I said, you know, if the gun comes out, again, talking from EDC, if the
Mhm.
gun comes out, you can forget mindset, situational awareness, gear, tactics. That is all absolutely gone.
It's over.
It is now a shooting problem 100%, and whether or not you have the skill to deal with it.
Yes.
So, you know, you couldn't possibly, from an EDC perspective, if I go to Home Depot today, there could be a million variables that could happen. Any number of things. There's no tactics that are going to deal with that problem
Bingo.
when somebody just snaps.
Yep.
So all I have to rely on, the only thing I can control is how well I can use this gun.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's funny because I always say I've had a situation in my world that I've had to present my gun one time for a CCW situation, and I didn't fire a shot, and it solved the problem. So it goes into this whole thing too of, hey, you need to be able to quickly solve problems. That doesn't mean quickly start ripping on triggers. I was so able to deal with the stress and the problem solving aspect of things that by the time I presented my gun and that person noticed he was 18 yards away and isn't going to be able to clear the distance, he stopped and he turned. And my visual acuity, my ability to shoot at the speed of my sights and be accountable and all that stuff means I didn't shoot the shoulder blade to somebody. I didn't shoot somebody who's no longer a threat. I solved the problem as quickly and efficiently as problem without having to squeeze triggers at the speed of trigger. I shot at the speed of sight. It just so happened that the speed of sight was 0 at this problem. Now, if I had to solve the problem, I would have known it because my visuals were leading everything. I knew at what distance I could shoot each speed. I knew where I would need to hold a spot and all those kinds of things. And then an interesting thing that you popped into this list here is strong hand, weak hand gun handling skills. Now, I
mhm.
really like this because most people, and you see this in law enforcement a lot because they're always holding something when shit goes down, but it happens in real life too. It's hard to drop something and go to a gun. Now, in real life, you might have a child or a loved one with you, and you start to realize, man, strong hand gun handling skills, weak hand gun handling skills. It's not, oh, the Taliban blew my arm off and I have to shoot. That's not what it is. It's I might have medical being done. I might have something in my hand that can't be dropped, like a person, an asset, a baby, doesn't matter. I might be holding a door, right? There's a lot of things that could be going on that promote, hey, I might need to be doing something strong hand, weak hand. And in defensive world, we don't really know what that is. Well, turns out when you show up to a match and you walk up to that classifier and you
Right.
didn't know strong hand, weak hand was coming, it's the same feeling. You're not going to be able to solve it just by being a tough guy and rising to the occasion. You have to know that from the sport perspective, from the practical shooting perspective, I know exactly how to get a strong hand, weak hand grip. I know how to pass my gun over. I know how to solve problems, strong handed, weak handed. I know how to do all that kind of stuff subconsciously, and I can do it under stress and pressure of a timer. Right
Right.
now, I like to talk right there about something because I've now just this year already. I had a class. Oh no, it was 2 months ago, so technically it was 2024. But my last class of the year was a performance class. It was a competition fundamentals class with three SWAT team members, and one of them, he's been on the SWAT team for over a decade. That's what he does. He's kicked doors. He's got shot at and shot people and done all that kind of stuff. Previous to that, he was in the global war on terror overseas. Saw plenty of action. And we were like 6 hours into my competition fundamentals class, and he finished shooting a stage, and it was like it's big stage. It was like 28 rounds. There was a swinger, kind of a lot of high stress, high value targets. Like things had to go right for you to shoot the stage well, and he messed it up. And the first thing he turned and said to me is like, "I am more nervous and more stressed now than I've ever been in any of my other shoots." And I'm like, I can't say that, but he has. He said that to me, and he's not the only one. I've had that guy said that to me. I had somebody who was just working with me, a private client of mine said, yeah, the first time I got shot at, I was in Afghanistan. I don't even know what happened because I was a dumb 19-year-old. I got shot at in the desert and I just mag dumped in that direction. It wasn't exactly pressured stress metrics, right? He's like, I am pressured stress metrics when I'm sitting here trying to pass your standards. I'm so I hear from these people, hey, if you could shoot under my pressure, under my stress, under my metrics, you're actually over prepared for real life. Because there's that thing that you can't account for as far as like that adrenaline that kicks in, that problem solving skills. But
Right.
there's no hiding when there's a timer going, 15 people behind you, nothing stopping you in front of you. It's you versus you, and man, that's higher stress than people like to give it accountability for. And like you wrote here, strong hand gun handling skills. I'm a hell of a shooter, and you show up to a classifier, and it's a
Yeah.
strong hand weekend, and you haven't practiced that week. How do you feel?
Right. Yeah. Like 100%. It's, and that's what I laugh. I'm like, when people talk about, oh, you know, there's not real stress or never pressure. I'm like, well, you've clearly never shot a match with
Yeah.
15 people standing behind you, watching everything you do, and that are going to go up and look at the targets when you're done,
Yeah.
performing on demand like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, there's an immense amount of stress and pressure. It's a different type of pressure. It's still pressure. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you have to be able to perform those skills.
So I always joke, I'm like, hey, we talk about there's a list of metrics of or a list of skills of things that we need to do to call ourselves a good shooter, no matter who you are. There's a list of metrics next to it that say I'm a fast shooter or an accurate shooter, right? And you need to be able to do it under, like you said, consistently, time after time, under stress and pressure. Well, I don't want to shoot at my students. I don't know how else to get that across to people. Like, how am I going to prove other than stress, pressure, accuracy? Because even talk to like an Olympic athlete, like what's the highest pressure and stress out there is being able to do something to an Olympic level, right? So I know we can't hold people to an Olympic level all the time, but you could start to say, well, I'm going to use metrics of sports. I'm going to use sports pressure. I'm going to use all those pressure metrics because that's the highest pressure I can safely apply to these people. I'm not going to stand down range and have shots going over my shoulders. I'm not going to shoot at these people. I'm not tagging people with airsoft guns. Like that's stupid. And I will say then, one of the funny things, I don't know if you've got a chance since you started shooting competition, is I get a chance every so often to be ops for. I get to go be bad guy in a shoot house, and I get to go be the active shooter guy, or I get to go be the guy that lights off the SWAT call. And you know what I find? It's fun. Fun. I don't find I am more pressured standing there waiting for a beep than when I'm locked on my gun, gripped up already, knowing what's coming, where it's coming from, right? Like I'm actually in more control in a CQB situation than I am in competition. So it's like I feel better. And then I've also played with the metrics of it. You know what? I'm a jerk. So when I'm there being CQB, I take my shooters global and I clip it right here. And I want to know my metrics. I want to know how fast I shot to accomplish the mission, right? So let's say I roll through, because this happens quite frequently. 4 SWAT team members come in the formation they should. And I get 3 to 4 hits on each guy. It's amazing because they shoot me and I'm just a competitor. I'm standing there in Crocs and short shorts and like I'm hamming it up. I'm looking like a jerk just to like prove my point. But I go and I look at my metrics and I go, oh, look at that. 34 splits, 36 splits to save my life, to beat these people in a fight. That's slow if you ask us in the competition world.
Right.
36 splits? That's like if you were shooting a double at 36 split tomorrow, Gino, I'd be like, bro, let's pick it up, man. Let's pick it up, right? I start to realize, oh man, that's funny. We were worried. We were working with multiple incomers, and I was able to crack people at about a pace of 35 in the head while backstepping. That's slowdowns, right? So you start to realize, oh, the metrics that we apply are actually beyond the necessary metrics to shoot for your life. I can measure that now. I can actually say that with full confidence. So again, it goes back to that resistance training, that overload theory, right? I want to practice at 150% what's necessary. So I'm going to stress and pressure myself all the time and hold myself to metrics that are beyond the necessary metrics to even save my life.
Yeah, and the thing with competing in matches is it's exactly that. It's quantifiable. You can measure your performance. You can tell if you're actually getting better. After shooting a match, you know specifically where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. It informs your practice and your training, and maybe it informs who you should sign up for a class with or whatever. So, you know, if you say, okay, well, I have the gun for self-defense. Well, yeah, most people that buy a gun buy it for self-defense, myself included. And I came from, you know, the tactical side of things as far as like all the classes I used to take. But self-defense it's abstract. It lacks direction. There's no like, okay, how do you prepare for that? Like there's no way. So competing gives you something to prepare for, and it lets you know like, okay, here's where I'm strong, here's where I'm weak. And it gives you like, okay, if I know if I'm shooting this match in, you know, like I have 2 matches with you coming up in May and June, right? So you know, if I know I'm shooting those matches, it gives me something to practice for. Whereas self-defense is like, well, I don't know, I'm just practicing for I don't know. I guess, you know, if I need the gun someday.
Yeah. So. And ironically, competition is by definition an arbitrary hold test of all your hard skills. So it's like it is self-defense training because by definition, if you're training for the unknown, you can't know what's coming. So self-defense training is like a weird thing. So this is why I like it. What is included? Your left side of the column, right? All those things are included in self-defense training. Now, to get to the situational awareness and preparedness side of things is a different thing, but we could start to say, there's the metrics, there it is. Let's just define it. Let's just start to shoot it. And then you start to go into the the last two. Well, we've talked about a lot of on demand execution under stress. That's the whole precipice of what we're talking about. But the whole visually processing thing is one of my favorite parts of your graph that you put in.
Okay. Yeah. So that part is, and again, like people use different words for that, but basically what it means is, and this is part of the last two in particular to me with the fire side. So visually processing the encounter with urgency or visually processing a stage at aggressive pace. So basically what you're doing is you're by shooting the matches, you're acclimating yourself, you're inoculating yourself to stress, to running the gun under pressure. You're getting used to doing it that to the point where it's just going to be the default way that you shoot. It's not something that you have to like, okay, this encounter happened. Now I need to rise to the occasion or something like that. No, this is the way I always shoot. What do you mean? Oh, okay, I shoot. This is how I always get the gun out. This is how I always engage transitions or different distances. It's no big deal. So, by shooting a match, you allow yourself that. One thing I noticed in a lot of the tactical classes. Now, look, there's a lot of people that are doing really good stuff. It's not an across the board criticism or anything. Just my personal experience. My personal experience has been over time. Okay, there was a lot of holes and a lot of stuff, and there was no shooting with urgency. There was no understanding of how to engage different targets at different distances. The way I understand it now, with the aiming scheme stuff, the levels of confirmation, like all these things were, I was completely unaware of it. Now, I know they've been around for a long time in the shooting world. Nothing is new. It's already been done. It's all, but these things. Okay, what is shooting, and what is shooting from an EDC perspective? Concealed carry. You want to have skills that are a very high level. It's all it is the fundamentals at a very high level and at speed. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the last one, the on-demand one, is a huge one for me because anyone that's done a class with me, aside from maybe an intro class where somebody has never handled a gun, but anyone that has any sort of experience, and I get, from beginner to very experienced people, it's everyone goes through a cold drill. I hold myself to a cold drill every time I go to the range. Everyone goes through a cold drill. And what it is it's not a scenario-based thing or anything like that. It's just a combination of hard skills put together in one low round count drill. So you're going to have maybe, you're definitely going to have aggressive shooting with accountability. You're going to have different distances. You might have a reload in there. You're going to, transitions, whatever it is. And in that short amount of time, it gives me a good metric to see, what you've been doing in your practice time, like how much have you been practicing. And, you can tell when you look at somebody that comes to a class, you can immediately tell if this person's been dry firing, if they've been training or not.
Oh, yeah.
And so what the cold drill does, like the match, okay, it is a brutal wake-up call to where your skills actually live. And so for some people, it's very demoralizing and why they never come back again. And to other people, it's motivating. And it's like, okay, I'm not quite as good as I thought I was, and maybe I need to put a little bit more time in. And the fact of the matter is, like I said in the beginning, on demand and cold is where you will be if you need this gun. So you better understand how you perform. And that doesn't mean how you perform at your usual comfort 5-yard distances. It means, no, I want to see you run 5 rounds from 25 from the draw in under, 4 or 5 seconds or whatever, and then move to a different position and do this and X, Y, Z. So yeah, those last two in particular to me, it really is, it's kind of close to my heart. So.
No, I love that because that's the defensive attitude is like, I'm ready for anything and I'm not going to just learn to shoot to it every target, blah, 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 blah. But then you watch these guys and you give them permission to shoot faster and they have to look at a target and then they have to look at their sights twice and to look at a target and move on. And that's not visually and processing efficiently in any definition of the word. I'm not talking about speed. You're just not being efficient, period. Right. What we start to learn to do is collect as much information as necessary, no more, no less. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to overperform or underperform. I'm asking you to be as efficient as possible, right? Now, you said cold, right? On demand. Are we shooting the same stage 6 times in a row? Hell no, right? You're shooting 6 arbitrary challenges with arbitrary start positions, with arbitrary stage plans that are going to change that have no bearing in real life because they're all different every single time you show up to them. And do you have the subconscious cold skills? And you'll get the wake-up call. That's why I love the local matches. That's why I love the cold drills. You will see which skills are subconscious and which drills need some conscious work, need some polishing, we'll say. Everybody works on what they like to do. That is just the thing. You're comfortable. You do what you like. What you like to do is what you're good at. So most people avoid working what they're uncomfortable with. So if you are a human, you're going to fall into that lull. Nobody's perfect. So shoot a match and you'll very quickly see what skills you need to work on, what gear you need to work on. You mentioned, hey, as an EDC guy, you don't need competition gear to go shoot a match anymore, do you?
Right.
You could shoot from appendix. I don't need to get it. I could
Exactly.
shoot my Glock 19 from an appendix style from my pocket rig. And now I just had this conversation with somebody on one of the various Reddits or whatever. Hey, he phrased it in a humble way too. I know this sounds silly, but how do I feel comfortable carrying and shooting my gear in a real life situation? Because I don't yet. And I
Mhm.
answered, which you would probably do the same thing. Go shoot a match.
Yeah.
If you make it through a match with your gear and nothing's moving, you don't need to make that uncomfortable adjustment. You're not making that list of I need tos when you go home. You're set. You're good. You have a good solid set of gear. You could test your gear. If your gear runs through a whole match,
Right.
that's beyond the necessary amount of presentations, rounds, and anything you'll ever experience in real life. So you've tested your gun from clean through dirty, from every warm through cold conditions, from sun up to sundown. And you could say, if I can make it through a match, I could at any given time that I'm carrying this gun, it's accessible, it's usable, I can shoot it efficiently.
Right.
Or I know what I need to work on. So it's funny that people see this defensive side of things and they just neglect to say the test is really, if you're studying, the test is competition. If you
Yeah.
study all day long and then you tell me I've studied as much as a doctor, but you've never taken the MCATs and you're not a doctor, you're not a doctor. You didn't take the
Right.
test. I don't care. You got to take the test. You got to be under pressure, stress. You got to be able to spit out that stuff and be able to actually perform, right? So that's where you
Yeah.
start to realize, hey, I can also be, there's a lot of people out there that are guilty of this. Politicians are a great example that are great orators that don't live what they say,
Right.
right? There's a lot of instructors that are like that too. You don't get a chance to do that as a competition shooter. And I think that's what scares off a lot of people from competition. You have
Oh
to
yeah, yeah,
breathe.
it absolutely is because you're right there. Like it's for everybody to see. So not only is it for everybody else to see, but it's also for you to see. So whatever story you've been telling yourself in the mirror, whatever whatever it is, that's right front and center. It's like, okay, how did I perform? Well, I didn't perform like I thought I was going to perform. So, you know, and with the competition thing, the one thing, especially with instructors, when it comes to this, like who disparage it is, I get into discussion sometimes with other instructors about this, and they're like, "Oh, well, I never discouraged anybody, any students from competing." I'm like, "No, but you disparaged it to the point where they're not going to want to." So if somebody comes to you and they're coming to you for a class, they're assuming that you have the knowledge and experience and that you know what you're talking about, and so they're going to look to you for some sort of answer. Now, if you've been training for a while, if you've been taking classes, your experience with that, you kind of know how to sort through the bullshit of who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. But if you're newer, unfortunately, you're going to believe whatever instructor you go to.
Mhm.
And if they disparage and call it, oh, it's a game, it's stupid, it's this and that, well, now you've just discouraged somebody from getting better. You don't want to hold yourself accountable by going to a match and saying, because you have the instructor hat on, you have to be the best in the room, instead of swallowing your pride and realizing, okay, I have a lot of work to do.
You know what's
But
funny is as stressful as stages are, as stressful as matches are, you could probably agree with me. You know what's some of the most stressful shoots? All right, students, here's the drill. Watch me do it.
yeah,
Right? Isn't that some of the most stressful you've ever been? So, like,
yeah,
I know that I could perform to a high performance and high standards for my people because I practice it all the time. I don't have to warm up or slow down to demo things. And I will shoot at a match pace in front of people because that's what they're coming to me for. They're not coming to me to see an Instagram post and then me shoot at 70% of that. They're not coming to see me shoot at an A class pace or teach them how to be a B class shooter. I'm a grandmaster. I'm going to teach you how to be a grandmaster, right? You start to realize that's exactly what we're talking about here, man. It's the consistency, it's the confidence to be able to do that. And the confidence isn't that like I one time you could say what's your draw and you can answer me why because you have the data to support it. That's not a cocky, that's a confident answer. So that's where better decisions come from confidence. Confidence is based off data and reps. And all of a sudden you start to realize, I think performance shooting, practical shooting, and I think you agree with me, I think most people do at this point, is the best way to acquire all that data, right?
right,
Apply that data wherever the hell you want. But I think the secret is, I don't think it's a secret anymore. I have 3 SWAT contracts that I teach very frequently. When they're going to have a new guy come to them and he needs to learn to shoot a pistol, he goes to Sam. When they need a new instructor to be birthed, they go to Sam. Why? It's shooting. We are going to teach you tactics. The SWAT team guys, they're like, look, guys, we'll teach you what teamwork is, what our gear is, what our tactics is. We need your subconscious shooting skills to be up to par. Go find Sam.
right,
That's what JJ does. That's what a lot of these guys, these big, fast professional shooters do. They also teach that side of things. I also teach operators and these Delta teams and all these guys because they just want a subject matter professional to come nerd out about shooting. They don't want to hear crap about how I think their team should roll. They don't
Right.
want to hear crap about that. They want to hear me nerd out about how to make this piece of gear work better because they use that piece of gear too.
Right.
And then what I've also come to talk with a lot of these operators about is that like it's funny to them that I always joke because I'm always wearing Crocs on the range. It's like, yeah, some dude with fucking Crocs and short shorts can beat me in a gunfight and I'm some big bad operator. Like that bothers them. And then instead of being bothered, they want to learn because that's by definition, that's what the operators are. They're better than people. They're not hard-headed idiots. Most operators are not tactical dummies. They really are the guys that want to be better all the time, out train and out shoot all of us. And they hire subject matter experts. Tactical teams will just say it. Performance teams, they hire subject matter experts to teach them how to lift and how to be healthy and how to shoot. And they work the tactics out between themselves pretty much. So it's interesting. It's interesting to start to see, hey man, you just become a subject matter expert in the shooting. That's all it really takes to be a good shooter. And the subject matter experts that I've seen come from performance shooting, namely USPSA, PC, hit factor shooting in general. We'll just say hit factor shooting because that's been a thing for a while. I mean, 3-gun is 2-gun. That's always an argument too. But the best shooters I've seen out there are USPSA and PCSL type shooters.
Yeah, and the hit factor, in my opinion, anyway. I mean, the hit factor is the best way to measure this because you get a good balance of
Yeah.
speed and accuracy. And unless you're just going to the range to shoot and you actually don't understand what training looks like, what practice should look like, maybe your speed and accuracy kind of move like this, and it only gets to a certain level and then it'll stop.
Mhm.
But what the hit factor does, as you know, right? It for those people that maybe aren't familiar with it, you need both. You need speed and accuracy. And from a concealed carry perspective, home defense, whatever it is, you need both. There is no accuracy is more important. There is no just wild speed is more
100%.
important. So we have to be able to do both. You need that aggressive shooting. You need that accountability, practical accuracy, not bullseye shooting.
Yeah.
And you need to learn like kind of like a ladder run, like, okay, speed. Okay, I got to get acclimated to
Yeah.
that speed. Then I start cleaning up the accuracy and I keep building and just develop a new default level of skill.
Yeah.
But it's a way again to measure your performance. If you don't have a way to measure, you have no idea if you're getting better. And to me, was wondering when he's going to
I
make an
love it.
appearance, my cat.
Tactical kid.
Uh, but you have to have a way to measure your performance. And to me, the most important thing is pressure testing. If you are not pressure testing your skill set, you have no skill set under pressure. It's as simple as that.
Agreed. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it really is. It seems so simple to be able to talk about it like that, but I think it just comes down to now if people don't like I find that there's two kinds of people that like they shoot a competition, they shoot a qual, they shoot a drill and they fail and they hate that they failed. And then there's us that they fail and I don't like that I failed, but my next question is how do I do better next time? And like that's where it sounds so funny, but beyond just being the practical shooting aspect of things, this style of training will make you better hard stop, like just better. It's like
yeah.
instead of just accepting I'm bad or good at something and just eating it and just being like that's it. You now can understand how to train, how to make metrics, how to understand that and solve problems now with the gun. Solve problems now. It becomes a mental game. It becomes much more, and you start to realize how not tough guy all this stuff is. So when somebody's arguing about tough guy stuff with the gun, I tend to smile because you realize it's not tough guy stuff. It's mental stuff. It's repetition stuff. It's actually a game of who can be more disciplined because we're shooting common 9mm modern day handguns. You shouldn't be wrestling with these anymore. There's a reason these females like Lena and these little girls, and I don't mean little as in disparaging, I mean 120-pound small females can shoot guns as well as the big men out there because the gear is not the issue. This is not a physical sport. This is a mental sport, and Lena is sharper and more disciplined than the next guy. That's why. And you start to realize the operators, the guys out there are smart guys. They're quiet guys. They're humble guys. They're small guys. They're not these big hulking monsters that you think are out there. Like we don't have, it's just not who it is. Look at all the competitive shooters that are successful too. They're not these big, giant, loudmouth guys either. They're very humble, nice, pretty average dudes. They're smart. They're sharp. They're that kind of thing. But when you start to realize, you mentioned something, speed isn't more important than accuracy. Accuracy is more important than speed. I think that's what the precipice of practical shooting is the balance of it. Because on two ends of the spectrum, I always talk about this. On one end of the spectrum is everybody remembers that Turkish guy from the Olympics. Everybody loved him, right? He's just chilling with no glasses on, just like, yeah, just blasting shots. Super accurate. He won like a silver just standing there with the pistol. So everybody's like, damn, that's accurate. That's awesome. I loved him because bringing guns to like public is like always a good thing for me.
Yeah,
But I always say, hey, he's one end of the spectrum. He's accurate. Am I ever going to let him be accurate? No. If I'm fighting that guy, I'm not going to let him do that to me, right? The other end of the spectrum is all those guys you see in the subway videos who pull a hoodie gun out, right? And they start blasting at each other. They don't hit anything,
yeah,
right? They don't hit anything in front of them. They hit that lady over there. But the thing is, you could get lucky if the gun is out. You can't get lucky if you don't take shots. So you start to realize that there is a value to speed. You need to be taking shots, but you can't be taking shots hoping for luck if you're not a gangster in the subway. So you start to value both pretty heavily, and you start to go, hey, how do I get faster? Well, how do you learn to jump out of a plane? Jump out of a plane, right?
well,
You might need to go shoot a doubles drill to understand what it feels like. And then you go,
right.
oh, that's not so scary, is it? That I can see and feel and think at this pressure. Oh, I can start to understand speed and then understand that, hey, if I can slowly go fast and I can see at this speed, there's a meeting point for me. There's
Right.
something in there, and that's our job. That becomes our job at this point, right? It's basically
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
through that. It's
Well,
like,
no, it is. It's crazy because, and the stress thing is that people think because, it's to me, I look at it like this. Years ago, I used to box. And so it looks like somebody's getting ready for a fight. This is what I used to see on the range a lot of times. I'd still see to this day is people are like, in theory, they're preparing for a fight, but they're standing there and they're shooting at 5 yards, slow fire with everything laid out in front of them. It's like going to the gym and only hitting the bag and never getting in and sparring with somebody. And now all of a sudden you have a fight you have a fight that night. It's ridiculous. So, the thing is that you have to pressure test. We need the speed and the accuracy. We need both. The reality is that under stress, you start to do things that you won't do when you're calm and relaxed and shooting slow. You're going to put all sorts of input on that gun. And if you don't understand what kind of input you're putting in on that gun when you start shooting, when you're all amped up and scared, that's going to be a major problem. So like the whole thing with I know that this is like an internet thing now with the slow down and get your hits, but it does have validity. I mean, because to me, when I hear slow down and get your hits, especially for somebody that's preparing for self-defense, it's like that's a plateau inducing mindset. If every time they try to learn how to shoot faster, you tell them, oh no, slow down, they're never going to learn how to go any faster. It's all just going to be they go to the range to shoot, but they're not practicing
yeah,
for anything.
I
So you
love
have
that.
to allow yourself, you got to allow yourself those mistakes. You have to learn.
Mhm.
So
I
that's
use that example all the time because I'm like, slow down and get my hits. What if fast wasn't the problem? What if my grip was the problem?
yeah,
What if speed was absolutely right? You don't know that if you're listening to the red coats behind you because those red coats have never pressure tested it. So
exactly.
I'm a big person on exactly. It's like you got to pressure test these things. You got to understand what you do under stress and pressure so that you get trained in such a way. If you've never been punched at, yeah, a punching bag is not the same thing as somebody trying to hit you. It's just not
Right.
the same. You're not going to punch the same. You're not going to stand the same. You're not going to act the same.
Right.
So I come from a taekwondo and wrestling and that kind of background. It's the same thing. The best taekwondo, the best black belts weren't the best bars.
Right.
Never taekwondo somebody in a real engagement.
Yeah.
So you start to realize pretty quickly there's a difference between how you're going to act in real life and how you're going to act in theory, and learning to bridge that gap. And again, I'll say it time and time again. I don't want to have to shoot at you or have a fight to pressure test this. I would think a timer is plenty. I've figured out, well, a timer is plenty stressful. If you could overcome a timer, good for you. You're better than most everyone out there.
Yeah.
So once you can overcome a timer, once you overcome and you're perfect every single time, okay, I'll start shooting over your shoulder like a crazy Russian instructor. It's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen. Nobody's ever that good. Nobody's that, you know what I mean? Nobody's perfect. Nobody's robotic. It's just not gonna happen. So I find that this kind of is, the most stressful situations I've ever been in. Hey, go to nationals, go to a state match, go to a match, and you want to talk about difficult. You're on your 12th stage of the day. You got there, not kidding. You left your house at 4:30 in the morning. You got there at 6 a.m. You had a barbecue lunch. You want to take a nap. It's 3 in the afternoon. You have 3 stages left.
Yeah.
You start to realize the value in being able to perform consistently, and that being the skill level, because I don't know when during the day this gunfight was going to happen. I'm basically presenting you 12 different opportunities to prove that you could be a consistent gunfighter from sunup to sundown in these stages, because it's a consistent course of fire for everybody. And if you think you're an A-class shooter, you should be able to shoot A-class level 12 times.
Right.
If you think you're a grandmaster, you should be able to shoot grandmaster 12 times. It's pretty funny. So you start to realize, oh, okay, that's saying I should have the cold skills and the cold performance at any time to be able to step up and maximize my abilities. So welcome to performance shooting. Welcome to practical shooting, everybody. Like, it's not even an argument. I just find it so funny that, like, every once in a while, I almost find that when I see these videos and I see these people talking crap about competition, I think it's parody. And the one that popped up recently was just like some real big, fat, out of shape guy on some desert range by himself talking about the competition stuff that's going to get you killed in real life. And I was just like, I thought it was Perry. I was laughing for the first minute of it because I was like, man, he got me. And I was like, oh, he's serious. Oh, he's serious. Oh my God. And then you go into the comment section and you see every professional shooter just laughing. And I'm like, all right. We'll take care of it. But that's what sparked this conversation. I realized that it's as much as I live in the echo chamber of competition and now practical and performance shooting, and I'm sure you hear it too. For some reason, this argument still exists. So hopefully the little clickbaity conversation kind of gets some views out there and they can see this and kind of lead to like hopefully better training, your training, my training, training around. There's more local instructors and more people now doing this performance training, which is awesome. I am very grateful for the guys making this popular. I'm very happy that this is becoming a popular thing online, and YouTube is just a drove of information. But now that's not always a good thing. I'm trying to now hope that guys like you and me can catch the forefront of things.
Yeah, I mean it is though. I mean, the reality is, at the end of the day, you can't replicate a gunfight. Okay, not even force on force is going to replicate a gunfight, because at the end of the day, it's not. It's not real rounds. So but this is like shooting a match is a way to expose where your skills are, to teach management of the stress, and so that you can actually get better, develop the skill set that you've been telling yourself and the people that you're tasked with protecting, how good you are, to actually live up to the skill you think you have.
Yes,
and so, don't, it's like the same thing as the target. You have to allow yourself the mistakes to learn. You have to get in there and swallow your pride, swallow your ego, and put your skills to the test and be honest about where you're actually at. And it's like going to the gym. Guys at a match, if you don't understand something, or you have a question, if you ask somebody that's good there, like somebody like you or yourself, right? Yeah, you're more than happy to help, just like somebody at the gym. They're like more than happy to help you. So it's not like this environment where people are going to be like making fun of you or anything like that. It's it's a good time. If nothing else.
That's why I use the fitness analogy all the time. I'm a CrossFitter, and everybody has what they say about CrossFitters, and I did too. I was a power lifter and a bodybuilder till I CrossFitted for 10 years. I did that before I CrossFitted, and I walked in the CrossFit gym, and just like a USPSA match, I was like, why aren't you all dicks? I thought you were all supposed to be mean. I thought this was supposed to be douchey, and everybody's like, no, they're the most helpful, nice people who are going to help you get better in general. And like, you also realize the same thing. Like, I want to be able to go to these places and perform at my normal level. I don't want to one time said I benched 405, right? I bench 405 right now because I did it yesterday and I'll do it tomorrow. I'll never bench 405, but it's one of those like, hey, I want to be able to say I can do those things. I don't live in the one time I shot my best bill drill. I did it yesterday. I'll do it tomorrow. I know what my standards are. I know what all those things are. If you don't go to the gym and figure it out, you'll never figure out where you stand. And yeah, you'll never meet these. It's funny because you'll never train with these people that want to help. I want to help all the people at a match. They want to help you. All these performance shooters, like I want this to be popular, but I also love this. Like I'm not in the military. I'm not in the police. I'm not doing this because anybody's forcing me to. You're the same way. The Ben Stogers of the world, like they love this stuff. This is what they do. So that should speak enough to be like, hey, they're dedicated their whole life to this. Maybe there's something like, maybe let's listen to these guys. Like let me listen to Ronnie Coleman, or let me listen to these guys from the gym that like they're onto something. Maybe they are onto something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't have a desire to go stand out in a field in sub-zero weather, just for the hell of it. Like I enjoy doing this. I like doing it. I'm super excited when I know I have a class coming up. So it's
right. I'm looking outside at the foot of snow that fell yesterday and the whipping winds, and I'm like, I do have a client tomorrow. All right. Like, all right. Well, it's all right. I like my job. That's cool. But yeah, man. Well, thank you I know we could chat about this stuff forever, but thank you for coming on for this, because this is one of those videos that it just pops up too often. And I figured another instructor who happened to have the same parallel thought, the same that same thought situation, that we should get on, talk about this, let the internet listen to it, let everybody argue about it. They shouldn't argue about it, but let them do what the internet does about it. And then, hey, hopefully they pop into one of our classes and start to eat their words, right? Because that's always the thing at the end of the day. I issue this challenge publicly, I guess, as good as time as any. It's a podcast. Any defensive shooter, any other performance shooter, any let's say anti competition shooter, I have a public challenge issued all the time. What's your favorite drill? Let's do it. I'll do it with your gear. You can hand me the gear. I don't care if it's a Glock with iron sights and it's a 40 cal. I don't care. Do you want to do a 2-mile ruck and then 50 burpees and then do shit? I don't care. Whatever your favorite thing is, let's do it. But we're going to put a performance metric to it. Whatever you do, I'm going to compare myself to it, and we're going to put a percentage to it, because that's how we figure out in competition world who's a better shooter, right? Exactly. Here's the thing, though, is even if you do beat me, what I'm going to do is ask you, okay, now let's step over to my arena and we're going to go shoot a stage. And do you think let's just say I was 5% worse than you in your drill. Do you think you're going to be 5% worse than me in a stage, or do you think you're going to fail to 20, 40, 60%, right? That's where I start to say, well, then there's a clear answer for a more well-rounded shooter. If I could do 95% of your standard, you could only do 60% of my standard. There's no more arguing. And this is why I like metrics. This is why I like hit factor. There's no more attitude. There's no more arguing. So that's one of my public things that I have for all my instructors. Like, I'll shoot your favorite drill. Let's just measure yourself against each other, but you have to come shoot my favorite drill. You have to come shoot El Presidente with me, right? You have to come shoot whatever classifier I chose. Then you start to realize pretty quickly, oh, when we start to put numbers to it and take the attitude away, you're right. Sorry, my bad. So yeah, man. So I love it. I love it. So yeah, anybody out there? Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is Gino. Gino, you're in what, the Lebanon area in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Lebanon, Pennsylvania, right next to Lancaster at Lebanon County Police Combat Pistol Club.
Boom. So if you're in, I guess that would be considered the southeast-ish Pennsylvania area. Gino's a guy to go find. He's another full-time instructor, lives and breathes this kind of stuff. Those are the kinds of guys I get along with. I'm in the Northeast in the Poconos, so we always see each other for competitions and stuff. So thank you for coming on, Gino. As always, you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, comment underneath. But I linked Gino into the podcast where I'll be posting it, so you could find his website. My stuff's easy to find. I don't need to plug myself on here. But the one thing I always say at the end of this is always, don't forget to dry fire.
That's it, 100% every day. And thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I'll be talking to you soon.
All right, sounds good.
I'll just